My parents secretly forged my signature to secure a $200,000 loan for my sister's wedding. When I showed up, I realized they had given me the wrong address. I called my sister and she laughed, saying the ceremony was over and that cheap people like me weren't allowed. So I planned a shocking surprise upon her return at 32 years old. A few months back, I got a call from the bank about a $200,000 loan application. The strange thing was I hadn't applied for any loan and knew nothing about it. Later, I found out my parents had taken out the loan in my name to pay for my sister Melissa's dream wedding. Melissa, now 27, has always been spoiled, and I was never close to her. While my parents share some blame, Melissa is old enough to have thought about her choices. Even at family events, we hardly interact. What shocked me most was learning that my parents, who I hadn't spoken to much in years, had taken such a big loan without telling me and even made me the co-signer. Melissa has been with her fiancé, Kevin, for about a year and they got engaged a few months ago. The loan was for their wedding, but I wasn't even invited. Honestly, I expected not to be invited, so it didn't bother me much. My parents never mentioned anything about the wedding, so I didn't think it was an issue. After the bank call, I immediately called my parents. At first I thought there had to be a mistake, but they quickly admitted it. They even defended Melissa, saying it was natural for me, as her sister, to help with her wedding, even if it meant using my name for the loan. Apparently, Melissa had told my parents she needed money for the wedding and they couldn't say no. What's surprising is that both Melissa and Kevin have jobs and should be able to afford their own wedding. Still, they claimed they couldn't handle the costs themselves. My parents said Melissa wanted an extravagant wedding which pushed the expenses too high. They even asked Kevin's parents for help, but they refused and set clear limits. So why couldn't my parents do the same? I refused to agree to the loan, but my parents went as far as forging my signature. They thought asking me for permission would be too much trouble, so they didn't even bother to inform me. When I found out, I couldn't hold back my anger. But by then the loan was already approved and it was too late to stop it. Determined to fix the situation, I decided to take my parents to court. My father kept insisting, "It's only natural for you to help your sister. We're family." He tried to guilt me, saying filing a lawsuit will only hurt the family, using my sister as an excuse. After hanging up in frustration, it became clear that my father cared more about Melissa's wedding than the fact that they had committed fraud. That was when I made up my mind. I informed my parents I was taking legal action and prepared to cut ties with them. I called the bank to request copies of the documents related to the loan and began planning my legal steps carefully to minimize any unnecessary fallout. I also consulted a lawyer to fully understand the situation and ensure I was ready for what lay ahead. While reviewing a loan contract, I felt overwhelmed. What stood out to me was the condition that the loan had to be repaid within 3 years. A massive responsibility I never agreed to take on. My parents knew I was planning to start my own business soon. I had spent months securing funding and finding investors, and they were aware I intended to quit my job, which meant I wouldn't have a steady income for a while. Despite this, they had shown no concern for my plans. They had dragged me into a situation where even one missed payment could force me to repay the entire $200,000 loan. Feeling betrayed, I decided to take things a step further. I logged onto Facebook and searched for Melissa's fiancé, Kevin. In that moment, something inside me shifted. If my family had put me in this mess, I felt it was only fair for everyone to know the truth. I wrote a detailed message explaining how my parents had taken out a loan in my name, forged my signature, and handled all the paperwork without my consent. I advised Kevin to break off the engagement and think carefully about marrying into a family that could commit such actions. I didn't stop there. I sent the same message to Melissa's friends, relatives, and even my parents. I felt they all deserved to know what had happened, but deep down I couldn't help but wonder if I had gone too far. I wanted to find out if my sister knew about the loan. She was always close to our parents, so it was hard to believe they'd do something like this without her knowing. When I started asking questions, my parents were furious. They begged me to take back what I had said and repeatedly contacted my sister. It turned out she had no idea about the loan or that I was made the co-signer. When she found out, she was upset about being lied to and angry that she would now have to cover the wedding costs herself. She was furious with our parents. As expected, my mother became emotional, blaming me for ruining everything, and saying I had no right to get involved. My parents were angry that I told Kevin and his family the truth, but I ignored them. Looking back, I wondered if it was really necessary to support my sister so much. My parents had planned to deceive me just to give her the money. Then I heard from my sister. She told me I didn't know about the loan, but you should have talked to the family before telling Kevin and his family. She accused me of ruining her wedding and her relationship. She wasn't entirely wrong. I should have talked to the family first. But did she truly know nothing about it? I started to feel uneasy. Had I gone too far by exposing the truth? Did I make the right choice? Dragging Kevin's family into this created a lot of chaos. Still, I stayed firm in my decision to take legal action. The bank responded saying they would investigate the fraudulent loan application. Since the loan wasn't fully processed, I wouldn't be held responsible for any payments. That was a relief. A few days later, I managed to find contact information for Kevin and his family. Meanwhile, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Calls and messages from my parents, relatives, and friends poured in. My sister also messaged me, angrily saying, "You've made a private family matter public. You went too far." She later called and said Kevin and his family were reconsidering the wedding because of what I had told them. I felt completely confused. She accused me of ruining her life, saying I had destroyed her future. She insisted she didn't know anything about the loan or that my parents had made me the co-signer. Hearing my sister blame me left me stunned. She told me that if I had a problem I should have spoken directly to our parents instead of cutting ties. When I emailed Kevin and his family, I admit I was very angry, but at the time I didn't think I was wrong. I asked my sister, "You knew about all this, didn't you?" But she kept saying, "It's none of my business." I reminded her how our parents had always prioritized her over me, always saying yes to her, and now they had committed fraud in my name just to fulfill her wishes. She refused to accept this easily, and since she didn't seem to be lying, I started to wonder if I had been wrong to think she was involved. I wasn't sure if I could trust her, but I wasn't ready to let it go so quickly. The next morning, my mother called me. She was crying and begging me to reconsider. She told me that Kevin had broken off his engagement with my sister. I was shocked. My sister hadn't mentioned anything about it. When I spoke to her the night before, she only said the situation was hard, without saying anything about the engagement ending. Hearing this left me speechless. My mother told me how devastated my sister was and how much she blamed me. It seemed my suggestion for Kevin to rethink the engagement made him realize how serious the situation was. My mother went on accusing me of ruining my sister's life, tearing our family apart and causing everyone so much pain. I listened quietly, feeling both guilty and oddly certain that I had done the right thing. Deep down, I couldn't deny a small sense of satisfaction in seeing my parents face the consequences of their actions, but I also felt sorry that my sister's wedding plans had fallen apart. When my mother finished talking, I firmly told her, "I'm not going to apologize for telling the truth. Let's not forget. You committed fraud. I'm not the villain here." I criticized my parents for signing those documents without my consent, but my mother still didn't seem to understand the seriousness of what they had done. For the rest of the week I felt drained, but my mother kept repeating that I should have ignored everything for the sake of keeping the family together and maintaining peace. I managed to avoid contact with my family, but rumors started spreading quickly. Relatives began sharing their opinions about what had happened. Some supported me, saying you have every right to be upset, while others said you shouldn't have made this a public family issue. During this time, my sister started posting a lot on social media, venting her feelings without naming anyone to directly. Whether it was about me, her friends, or someone else, it was clear she was upset. I felt uneasy seeing people who didn't fully understand the situation offering her sympathy and support. They wrote things like, "Some people just want to see others suffer," or "The worst betrayal comes from your own family." I didn't want to get involved in a social media argument with my sister, so I stayed silent. A few days later, my sister contacted me again. She was still upset, but calmer this time. She told me the engagement is officially off. I'm breaking up with Kevin, and his family has completely cut ties with me. She also mentioned that she was moving out of their shared home and staying with a friend for a while. Then she said something that completely shocked me. She admitted she had known about the loan all along. After repeatedly claiming she had no idea and wasn't involved, she finally confessed she had been aware of it from the beginning. I thought everything would work out once the wedding was over. She said I didn't think it would turn into such a big problem. She added that she hadn't expected the bank to contact me directly. When I asked her, "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" she replied, "I was too scared." She admitted they had planned to keep it all a secret for me because they were afraid I would ruin the wedding if I found out. But once Kevin broke off the engagement, she no longer felt the need to hide it. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. For the past week I had been overwhelmed with guilt, feeling sorry for her situation, but now I realized she had been part of the plan from the start. She seemed upset, not because her relationship ended, but because her plan to use the loan had failed. In her anger, she called me a terrible person and immature. I calmly responded, "I don't owe you anything and I don't need to return any favors." At that moment I knew I was done with her excuses. I realized how broken our family relationships had become, and I knew there was no fixing them. After talking with my sister, I felt a strange sense of relief, like a weight had been lifted. My family had never truly cared about me, and I no longer felt the need to worry about people who were indifferent to me. But that conversation didn't change the mess left behind. Even though I hadn't spoken to my parents in a while, they kept trying to contact me. Over the next few weeks our relationship only got worse. Relatives called me constantly, trying to convince me to drop the lawsuit. They'd say things like, "Aren't they your parents, and isn't there another way to handle this?" They seemed to overlook the fact that my parents had committed fraud and believed legal action was too harsh. I ignored their pleas and stayed focused on gathering evidence with my lawyer. The more I uncovered about what my parents had done, the angrier I became. Not only had they forged my signature, but they had also falsified financial records and lied about their income to secure the loan. Fortunately, the bank supported my side and decided I wasn't responsible for the loan. However, my parents found themselves in serious legal trouble, which made the family conflict even worse. Meanwhile, my sister moved in with friends, leaving her apartment to start over. She blamed me for her breakup with Kevin and was also angry at our parents for putting her in this situation. One day I received an email from my aunt, Anna. She had stayed neutral through everything and hadn't gotten involved in the drama. Anna invited me for coffee, and since she wasn't the type to cause trouble, I decided to accept. When we met, she asked how I was doing. Talking to someone who wasn't trying to manipulate me felt comforting, and I appreciated her genuine concern. We talked about the recent events, and then she brought up my parents. "Your parents seem very shaken right now," she said, stirring her coffee. "They're worried about what might happen if this goes to court, but honestly they should have thought about that before committing fraud. I suppose they didn't expect you to take things this far," she added with a knowing nod. Her words made me feel more determined not to let my parents trample over me again. Then she asked, "I understand how you feel, but what do you really want? Do you want a sincere apology, or do you want your parents to face the consequences of their actions?" Her question caught me off guard. "I just wanted to understand your ultimate goal," she said kindly. I realized I hadn't thought about things from that angle before. Part of me just wanted to be free of this mess, while another part felt my parents needed to face the consequences of their actions. "Maybe I just want them to understand they can't treat me this way anymore," I said slowly. I wanted it to be over, but I didn't know how to get there. My parents had always favored my sister, no matter what, and this time they had gone too far. I couldn't just ignore it. Anna nodded slightly. "I completely understand how you feel," she said, "but that's not how your parents see it. To them they see you as the one causing all the problems." Her words stung, but I appreciated her honesty deep down. I already knew this was how my parents thought. As Anna said, they would never admit their mistakes. She hugged me and encouraged me, "Stay strong." She said, "You're not wrong in how you feel. Even if your parents can't admit their faults, what you're doing shows more integrity than anything they've done to you." After our talk, I spent a lot of time thinking about what I truly wanted. While I knew my decision might put more strain on the family, I started to wonder if taking this to court was the right path, or if there might be another way to resolve it. A few days later, my lawyer called with news my parents' attorney had proposed an out-of-court settlement. Hearing this made me anxious. My parents were willing to pay a significant amount of compensation if I agreed to drop the lawsuit. I wanted to move forward, but I wasn't sure if I should forgive them so easily. The settlement offer was more than enough to avoid a lengthy legal battle while still holding them accountable financially. With my lawyer, I carefully reviewed the details. The money would ease my financial worries and give me the freedom to focus on my business, freeing me from the stress that had weighed me down for so long. But even as I considered accepting the offer, a part of me worried it might make my parents think I had forgiven them. Still, this settlement felt like a small victory in the end. It gave me a chance to move on and focus on my future. I decided to accept the offer, agreeing to drop the lawsuit in exchange for my parents paying the compensation. While this resolved my immediate issues, my parents still faced fraud charges from the bank. It wasn't the perfect outcome, but once the paperwork was completed and everything was finalized, I felt a sense of relief. With the lawsuit behind me, I no longer had to worry about the mess. However, this decision changed my relationship with my family forever. The tradition of spending holidays together was gone, and after this there would be no more family gatherings. I thought I'd feel at peace, but instead it felt like we had become strangers, tied only by blood and a shared past. The settlement gave me the freedom to focus on starting my new business, which was a positive step forward. Yet it was hard to fully let go. Even weeks later, the events replayed in my mind, and I had to accept that my relationship with my family would never be the same. Though they were still alive, it felt as if I had lost them forever. I didn't want to reach out, and I knew they wouldn't either. One evening, while I was working late in my new office, I received an email from my Aunt Anna. She simply asked, "How have you been?" It surprised me since we hadn't spoken since our last meeting weeks ago. In her email she wrote, "I know this has been hard, but don't carry it all on your own." Her words touched me more than I expected. Somehow she seemed to understand that I was struggling. I realized how isolated I had become, losing friends and distancing myself from my family. Her message meant more to me than I could explain. I didn't know how to fix my relationship with my family, but I decided I didn't have to carry the burden alone. A few days later, we met again at the same cafe when I felt more at ease. Anna looked at me kindly and said, "Family isn't always about blood ties." Her words stayed with me as I thought about the settlement. Even though the money allowed me to move forward, I still felt conflicted about accepting it. I hadn't fully let go of my anger toward my parents. "Family is something you choose," she continued. "It's okay to find others who'll support you. You don't have to hold on to the past, even if your sister or parents aren't in your life anymore." Her words resonated deeply. Letting go of family, even after all the hurt, felt like erasing years of trying to gain their approval, something that had shaped much of who I was. That day I realized it was okay to move forward without holding on to the past, and that I could create a new kind of family for myself. I thought moving on was impossible, but, as Anna said, I didn't have to stay stuck in the past. With her support, I was able to start a new life without depending on the people who had hurt me. It wasn't easy, but it wasn't impossible either. Several weeks passed, and I used the settlement money to establish my own company. I hired employees and started taking on challenges that were meaningful and manageable. Slowly, my days became fulfilling. Work had become my new passion, and for the first time in a long while, I felt hopeful about the future. One evening, as I was heading home from work, I got a call from an unknown number. Something about it made me uneasy, like the past wasn't ready to let go of me just yet. I answered the call, and it was my sister. "I want to talk to you one more time," she said. Her voice was calm, which surprised me. I hadn't spoken to her since her engagement was called off, so hearing from her again left me unsettled. She continued, "I just found out that our parents are selling the house. I thought you should know." Her tone sounded heavy. "You probably don't want to hear this from me, but our parents are in debt. They've run out of money." Her words left me speechless. I didn't know how to respond. "They lost everything because of what happened with you," she said. Then added quietly, "But I've realized this is the result of their own actions. I feel a little guilty, but our parents brought this on themselves with their fraud." She paused before saying, "I don't feel responsible for their financial mess, but I don't know what to do either. I couldn't figure out what my sister wanted from me. She'd been staying with a friend, but it seemed that situation had gone sour too. Was she looking for sympathy, or was she asking for help?" Finally, I replied, keeping my tone calm, "I know this is a tough situation. I don't think there's much I can do, though. Our parents made their choices, and those choices led to this." "What did our parents want?" she asked immediately. I wasn't trying to start an argument, but her question caught me off guard. For the first time, I noticed a sensitivity in her voice, a sign she was trying to understand the consequences of their actions. I still wasn't sure what she expected, but I knew where I stood and where I needed to go from here. I had rarely seen my sister so unsettled. The sister who had always been spoiled and raised to feel entitled now sounded anxious and unsure. "You need to figure this out for yourself," I said gently. "Try to handle it with as much kindness as you can." For years I tried to talk with our parents, but I eventually realized I had to follow my own path. Maybe it's time for you to find your own path too. There was a long silence on the other end of the line before she finally replied, "Yes, maybe it is." After that we said little else and ended the call. I wasn't entirely sure how I felt in that moment. A few weeks later, I heard that our parents had sold the house and were planning to move into a smaller one. Even then, I knew I couldn't fix their financial problems or solve my sister's struggles. I didn't reach out to my parents for so long. I had craved their approval, but I realized it was time to let that desire go. For the first time, I was building something entirely for myself, with the settlement money. I had established my own company and started a new chapter. It hadn't been an easy journey, but I finally felt free from my parents' expectations and control. I was no longer someone overlooked. I was someone who mattered, someone who could shape their own future, and now I was ready to walk forward and live my life to the fullest.
Good morning， 早安，妈妈们。借我你那个麦试一下。你们收到了这个 Oxford Dictionary Pen 没有啊 ？e-Camus 就是上次 copy 的第一，跟这个 e-Camus 配合，然后开卖的这个 e-Camus。就是 e-Camus 我自己呢也有买一套给我的孩子，然后呢我也买一套送给。